Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the AI Argument. It is me, Justin Collery. I am joined as ever by my co host, the ever careful, the ever vigilant Frank Prendergast. Frank, I'm not even going to lead people in. I'm not going to try to softy this one. You have a bone to pick.
I'm feeling ranty, Justin. I feel like having a
That
rant.
came out wrong.
That was a T. That was definitely a T. Yeah, okay, here's what happened.
Yeah.
And this isn't new. This has been going on for a while. But the other day, I just
Mhm.
saw yet another post on LinkedIn that was advocating this content creation approach, which was basically, hey, it's really easy to create content now. You just go and steal someone else's content, pop it into AI, have AI write a post for you, and post it on social media. And it drives me nuts. And what really drives me nuts is that right now it's actually working. If you do it well, it can work. So you've got these people building followings by creating content that AI can basically tell people are going to like to some degree. So it's a bit like, it's a bit like it's easy content to like. They're like
And you think when
memes
you say
in a
it
way.
works, Frank, you talk about it, does it work in like the LinkedIn business content, or are you talking about it works in this sort of
Mm.
Instagram sort
Engagement.
of
Yeah, engagement. So it
yeah.
appears, from what I can tell, poking around, because I was like, I was kind of a little bit skeptical and wondering, like, does this even work? From what I can tell, people are building followings with this method and getting engagement on their content. Now it's hard to tell because if people are the kind of people who are happy to just take content, run it through AI, and publish it, they're probably also the kinds of people who are willing to be in engagement pods. um, so between the two things, who knows? But there's a lot of this out there. There's a lot of this going on. And as somebody, as a marketer who has been teaching people for years to create content with purpose and authenticity, it kind of makes me weep a little when I see people just churning out absolute rubbish AI content that is completely inauthentic because, the AI, some of the examples in the video I was watching were like stories about, oh, I used to find it really difficult to do X, and now I find it really easy because I found this methodology, and here's the breakdown of the methodology. And it's like, if I contact that person who has published that post and say, hey, tell me about that methodology, will they even know what I'm talking about? Because they just ripped it off from somebody else's content. It's completely inauthentic. It's lies. A lot of it is just lies because the AI is speaking on your behalf. But it
I
got
think
me
you need to
thinking
double down on
about,
your authenticity though, Frank. I
yeah,
think, right,
what,
if you have do you not think, right, that what happens is there's a period of time where you do what you say, and then everybody becomes accustomed to it, and then everybody recognizes, oh, that's AI generated content, and then if you go back to being truly authentic, then
hmm.
actually you will shine because you're now different relative to all of the AI content.
But you and I talk a lot about, how AI is improving all the time and how, with the right prompts, etc., you can get better and better output. So, and we've also talked on this show about how AI detection is, there is no way really to detect AI content. There's no good proven method for detecting AI content. So, do you not think just the pure scale of this, like if everybody starts doing this, the pure scale of AI generated content, the pure scale of content that is not coming from an original place or an original author will drown out anything else? And a second point to that, do you remember that video? I think it was Thanksgiving last year that Mark Zuckerberg did, and he was on a surfboard
Yeah.
with in a suit with a can of beer, and I
Yep.
can't remember what else. Oh, and an American flag.
Yep.
And I think it was Chris Penn made the point, you know, this is what it's going to take to create authentic content, because, right now AI could not create a video like that. And so
and
in order to create,
And you know that it couldn't create a content like that, right? Because that's your business,
Mm.
right? And that's what you know, right? That's what you're good at. Whereas I'm not into that side of AI. And I looked at the video. My first question was, Ash, that's probably AI. That AI has generated that. So you know, to
Yeah,
the layperson, you don't know that
yeah,
that's not AI generated, and it was brilliant.
yeah. I mean, and I agree with you. My first question was, hang on, is he showing us that they've made a huge breakthrough in video? So,
Yeah,
but it just shows you that, like, how can you be authentic in a world where we can't believe anything we see? So, I would love to think that human authenticity will win out, but I don't know that it's going to be on social media. I think, we've talked before about how it might drive people back to in-person events, or, possibly even smaller communities. And I've had some conversations here and there with people who are big proponents of blockchain, who are saying, well, blockchain could be an answer here, that, so you can verify, well, who is this content from, which I think also would help to build, authenticity and trust.
and
But I
actually, there was an
just
event
wonder,
just yesterday. There was an event just yesterday, by the way, um, from Sam Altman and his WorldCoin now, which is now going to be called World. And the purpose of that product, and we think that what's his name, Ives, Johnny Ives, he's working with Sam Altman to develop a hardware product, and we think that it's going to be basically this world
ah,
thing with Johnny Ives piece of
right,
hardware. And the idea of it is that it verifies that you're a human, and then you can create content, and the content then is verified as being human generated, which is very similar to what you're talking about there. um, I do think that in a world where everything is AI generated, something that's genuinely, I mean, I go back to one of the conversations we had before, which was where the AIs had to mimic a human, and they did it by just being a little bit less clever, right? And, make some mistakes, and that was, at time it's funny, but it is pertinent to this conversation, which is, it means if you
mm,
read something, it's a bit like looking, if you are clearly not in your usual place right at the moment. You've got different furniture around you. We all
yeah,
have a piece of old furniture that we really like, and we like it because it's not perfect. It's a bit squeaky,
yeah,
or the handle isn't quite straight, or the handle on the cup is a
mm,
little bit bent, or whatever. And that's what makes it
yeah,
familiar and warm to us. And it's those imperfections that we crave at a certain time. And I think the other side of it is as well, I do think in the near future we end up having this idea of agents doing our bidding for us, and so the content that you're talking about maybe matters less from a human perspective anyway. So I want to buy a kitchen, right? Because I'm moving into a new house. So I just get my agent to go off and say, here, look, can you just research? I've got about this amount of money. Give me some ideas first, right? I'm not even sure what I want. And it will just go off and it'll research and it'll read the AI generated content. It'll look at the products and it'll come back and it'll tell me what I'm interested in. So all that content actually doesn't matter. And then you're right. Then it comes
yeah,
down to, I phoned the place and I want to talk to the guy who's going to make my kitchen. So we're in back to the human imperfection or whatever it is. It's going to be a guy. It's going to be a person who's actually putting in the kitchen. I want to talk to him. Right? What's he going to do for me? How?
is
Show me your previous work. Good.
it going to be a guy?
Well, for the next couple of years. For the
Yeah,
next couple of
yeah.
years,
We
right?
have a window. We have a window of opportunity here for kitchen installers. Yeah.
What I will say, Jeffrey Hinton said there, I think it was 2 weeks ago, yeah, that we should all become plumbers, electricians for that reason. Those are going to be the last. But I take your point, right? And, I think this is another thing with AI, right? Have we all, certainly people who watch it closely, have we all not gone through an existential crisis? Which is, you're going through the same thing. Whereas, I look at, code that's output and I just go, nobody's going to put any value on code in the very near future. It's going to be nothing. Like, you can just, there's no speciality anymore. In fact, it's a way
Yeah.
better specialist at everything than I could ever be. And is this not the same, just in a different domain?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, but it's just something that I think it's just something that interests me in terms of, is this the death of social media? Because of the scale of it, and because of the inability to detect it, and because of the fact that there's no medium now you know, when ChatGPT launched, people were saying, oh, video is going to be really important because it'll show that you're human and it'll show that you're present. But of course now, you know, you use your HeyGen video avatar and
Yeah.
yeah.
But then, Frank, because
Yeah,
this
so
is
it's
the
super
AI
interesting.
argument. And what are your thoughts on this? Right. So okay. So an obvious implication of what you're saying is right that, and I think we talked about this before. You could have a social media app where when everything you post, you'll get hundreds of responses, none of them actually real, but they'll all tell you that you're absolutely wonderful. And I
Yeah.
read some information during the week about, they said there was people doing AI dating apps, but the people you're dating are not real either. They're not even raising VC because these people are already making so much money. And is it not the case that there's an awful lot of lonely people out there? And if you follow on what you're saying, is those people will not feel as lonely as they did before because they've been interacting with AIs that, as you've said yourself, are so good that you can't
Mm.
tell if they're real or not. What's the difference? Why not? Is that a good thing or a bad thing, Frank? I suspect you don't like that sort of a thing. You're more of a
I'm not sure. I have mixed feelings about it because I think that, you know, some of the studies that show that interacting with AI does reduce loneliness. I think that's great. And I think there is a certain amount of, you know, there is a certain amount of, if you don't have a support network, if you feel isolated, if you don't feel supported, if you have nobody to bash things around with, you know, there's no doubt AI is an incredible tool. I would hope that it never becomes a complete replacement for human interaction, and I would hope that none of the I would hope that's not the way we go. I would hope that it doesn't just isolate us further, because, you know, it's the same. In a way, it goes back to, if you look at the content that really bugs me, that people are just like spewing out from AI. I use AI to create content, but I use it, you know, I start with my own viewpoint. I start with my own content in the first place, and then I bash it around with AI, or I get AI to put it into different formats for me, or, you know, and so I recognize as well that there's probably other people who look at what I'm doing and feel like that's beyond their ethical line. So it's like, yeah, there are all of these movable ethical lines, and we all have to draw our own ethical lines.
What's an ethical line,
But I
Frank?
just most of us have ethical lines.
This brings me on to another topic, right? So we can ground this in a bit of science because I think it's related. So Apple released a paper
Hmm.
this week that said that AIs can't reason. Do you think that AIs can't reason, or do you think that they are reasoning?
I do not think that AIs are reasoning. I feel like, yeah, I mean, when I read this piece of news, I kind of thought, well, like, they're just confirming what we all kind of knew anyway.
I don't
You're
agree.
shaking your head. You're shaking your
Yeah.
head. Tell me, talk to me.
Well, I don't. I would ask you, right? So I think
Yeah.
this is sour grapes, by the way, from Apple, and you hear exactly the same line from Jan LeCun, the head of research for Meta, and he says, "Oh yeah, we can't. AIs don't reason; they're just pattern recognition engines." And I would say to you and Apple and Jan LeCun, define reasoning for me. Do you think that you reason, right? And in that, right, if you say that it's just a pattern matching, OAI it's just a pattern, and a large language model is just pattern
Mm.
matching. Well, actually, a lot of what you do is pattern matching too, and that's why as you get older
Yeah.
and get more experience at things, you get better at doing them. It's because your brain is pattern matching. So,
But we,
do they?
but we do, yeah, but we do reason. I mean, I think they had some good examples in that Apple paper where they gave AI a problem, and they discovered that if you give it a completely, you know, if you give it a piece of information that is not relevant to the problem, the AI will attempt to make it part of the problem, or will assume that it's part of the problem and try to figure out, you know, an answer that involves that piece of irrelevant information. And I think that if they were truly reasoning, you know, they would be able to isolate the incorrect information. whenever I'm using AI, I'm always like, I recently, John Aspirian, a friend of mine on LinkedIn, he was talking about how he did an experiment where he gave his book to Perplexity and asked it to write new summaries for the chapters, and he told the model to ignore the current summaries that were in the book, and of course it didn't. Like, some of them were almost word for word the summaries that were already in the book. And so, again, if it could reason, it would have been a very simple thing to exclude those summaries. And what we're doing right now with LLMs, in my experience, anything you want to do with them, they can do amazing things, but you have to break it down to like the smallest possible task and only give it what is relevant to that task. Otherwise, you don't know what you're going to get.
You're probably correct.
And I think,
right?
even the youngest humans learn how to start taking out the irrelevant stuff pretty quickly.
They do, but it takes a couple of years, and LLMs have only been really around for 2. So it's going through its terrible twos phase. I would say that this is why the O1 model from OpenAI is so important, because it's specifically trying to address that thing that that problem that you've highlighted, which is at the moment it's just giving you an off the top of the head answer. But if it could actually reflect, and I can see a lot of people going down different paths at the moment to research different ways where you can break a problem down or you can elongate it. And one of the things that's really sort of exciting about AI is it's so exciting, and there's so many people working down different paths. Somebody will solve that problem, right? It's an engineering problem now. It's not a it's not a conceptual problem. And you will get to the point. And so then, and I would even say, and I can't prove this, right, which has never stopped me before, so it's not going to stop me today. But I would say that even if you kept the current state of LLMs, but just had all of these people doing research in different ways, what you describe will be solved anyway. And so I think that LLMs do reason, and I think that we just haven't taught them how to think a problem through properly yet. And I think but the mechanics and the hardware needed to reason, I think that's all in place. In fact, I think as soon as you teach an LLM to do that, they will probably that will be one definition of AGI, because they will be smarter they already know more stuff than any single human. So if you can teach them how to reason through a problem, well, now they can reason as well as knowing more than any alive human. So therefore, they're by definition smarter than any human. So we'll see.
Yeah, it would be massive, but absolutely, I keep forgetting to make that graphic and sound that goes disagree.
This very quickly, right? We have to talk about, because it must keep you up at night. Nuclear power stations, Frank. They're going to be like, you live in Cork, I live in Waterford. I can imagine that by the time at the end of the decade comes, we'll probably pass 5 or 6 nuclear power stations just driving from Cork to Waterford.
This feels like it's moving very quickly, doesn't it? Like, it was only a couple of weeks. Was it a couple of weeks ago? I don't think it was last week, but maybe a couple of weeks ago on an episode, we were talking about AI potentially, being one of the factors in bringing back nuclear power as a major source of energy. And like, in just those couple of weeks, it seems like we've had a slew of press releases saying this company is now building nuclear power plant, this company is, and most of it directly related to AI.
Yep. And this is important for a couple of reasons. The first reason I would say is everybody's worried at the moment that AI is hype, right? It's not real. They're just pattern matching engines, just like we've discussed, and so on. And I would say that, actions are more important than words. And so if now you've got companies like Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, and they're all about to spend an awful lot of money building a lot of nuclear power stations, well, those are very strong signals that they absolutely believe that the hype is real and that it's worth investing in this technology. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I'd say is the guy from Anthropic, Dario Amodi, right? So the head of Anthropic, so he released a very long blog post during the week, and he was talking about, what the potential future would look like with, super intelligence or very smart AIs. And then he also talked about some of the limiting factors. And one of them he talked about was human factors. So society needs to change in order to adapt around AI. And if you think about that in the Irish context, at the moment, 20% of power in Ireland goes to power data centers. And very few of those data centers, as far as I'm aware, are AI data centers. So you can imagine at the current rate that we produce electricity in a short number of years, 100% of all of the electricity in Ireland could be just used with data centers. And so one of the things that the Irish population, because I don't know, if you turned around tomorrow and said, look, we're going to stick a nuclear power station in Carnsore, we're going to stick another one, down in Ballincollig, and we're going to have a third one somewhere off the West Coast, people would go nuts. I don't think that, people in Ireland have got their head around, the other, the idea that, we're probably going to need, and another thing is we already import nuclear power anyway from countries like France, and we're totally cool with that. So there's this whole, cognitive dissonance thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, nuclear power is definitely going to be part of our future, and people haven't got comfortable, and that will be a restrain, a break on development of AI in Europe.
I think this is somewhere we actually do agree. But I am curious. So you said, a lot of people aren't comfortable. I'm not comfortable. I see the logic. And I kind of, to a certain extent, defer to people who know a lot more about energy than I do when they say that, it is and has been for a long time the answer, but there just didn't seem to be any way to bring people around to it. I don't know how France managed it, but I'm curious, like you personally, are you comfortable with it?
In Cork, yeah, totally comfortable having a nuclear power station in Cork. Ballincollig, yeah, grand. No,
I
I
haven't watched it yet. But you mentioned there about like society, there needs to be changes, and society needs to come along with the changes that are potentially about to happen because of AI. And I haven't watched it yet, but you brought my attention to a speech that Obama gave, which I thought was really interesting, specifically in relation to like societal changes that may need to happen.
Very interesting, and very interesting because it was Obama he was at a World Economic Forum, I think, talk or something like that, and he was talking about the implications of AI. And it wasn't a long speech; it was about 10 minutes, but he was just saying, "Look, we really, as a society, need to start talking about and grappling with what the implications of AI are going to be." And he specifically pointed out things like a shorter working week, and he also then pointed to UTI, which he called, and UTI, for those, is universal thriving income, which is Frank's term, not a nasty.
Everyone deserves the UTI.
He calls it UBI, but he'll get on board, Frank, sooner or later. And it's interesting that it was Barack Obama who was talking about this, because he's kind of like a shadow government. I actually think he's running America at the moment, but that's a different story. Something that's not for this podcast. But he's not in power, but he's a very well-known political figure. And so again, clearly he buys into it, right? He thinks that it's important. And also, if you wanted to start to prepare the ground and get people ready for these types of changes, that would be the way that you would do it. You would get sort of the elder statesmen and people like that who are not directly in power, so they can talk freely to start talking about these types of things. So, I mean, I'm quite hopeful, in that regard.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because I read about how, in terms of the presidential election that's coming up, nobody is talking about AI, and the analysis seems to be, well, it's too complicated, it's too scary, and there's no winning in terms of whose vote are you going to get, Justin and Frank's,
Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting point, that like the conversations might be happening, but it might be like, yeah, let's start them. Let's start those conversations here.
Well, now nobody, Frank, may be talking about AI, but AI is making some of the presidential candidates talk.
Yeah. Yes. This is crazy. So you showed me this tweet from Donald Trump's account on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, with a video of Donald Trump shilling some cryptocurrency or crypto scheme or something that I'd never heard of. And I mean, you said to me, presumably his account was hacked. But I mean, why is that tweet even still up? So was his account hacked? Is that artificial intelligence? I mean, it looks AI generated to me. And
And
yeah,
everything
I
I
mean,
read said it was AI generated. The voice was AI generated, but it's still there. So it's like,
bizarre,
why hasn't he taken it down? Why is it still there?
bizarre.
But
But you know,
very similar to your story about Mark Zuckerberg, right? This is the world we
yeah,
live in. Is the
yeah.
video real? Is it
And
not?
you know,
Is
the
the voice
fact
real? Is it not?
disseminating kind of disseminating these kind of deep fakes, etc., online is one thing, but to go that extra step makes it, you know, even more nefarious, because to have it go out from the official account is yeah, I mean, it just makes it that much harder to determine, oh yeah, this is fake. And it goes back to what I was saying, you know, my rant at the very start about like the future of social media. And it's weird, you know, like I've seen so many ads on YouTube of Elon Musk shilling cryptocurrency scams to me, and I always report them, and I always get this thing back saying, no, it doesn't violate our policies. And I'm like, it's not Elon Musk. He's not associated with that company. It's a cryptocurrency scam. How does this not violate your guidelines? So you know, it's going to be just become an ever increasing issue, and I don't know what on earth we're going to do about it.
Whatever.
Surely we
Speaking
have
of
something
Elon Musk,
fun. Yeah, go
go
ahead.
on. Well, Elon Musk. I mean, my fun story for the week is the Chinese police robots, but I don't think you'll agree with that. So you're going to have to give me something else fun to go with. Unless you
Ominous.
want me to go with the Chinese robots. Let me just talk quickly about the Chinese, because I love a good AI. You know, normally we've got like a new AI controlled plane or a bomb or something like that, which always entertains me. So instead, some of you may remember this movie. No, it was a TV series
TV
from the
series.
19th,
Yeah.
which prophetically was called The Prisoner, which was perfect in this particular instance. And it was a big sort of bouncing ball that would go around chasing people. And so the Chinese government have now created a real ball that sort of runs along the ground. It just sort of turns over, and it's a police ball. And yeah, I think it's wonderfully horrible, and illustrates perfectly why I hope the US wins the AI race, because I don't want, you know, China's big balls coming around chasing me. For China's big balls to stay far away. Thank you very much.
You know, isn't it bizarre that you know, we've seen those kind of Boston Dynamics style dogs and kind of weird spidery things, and you know, and they're all really ominous for obvious reasons. But how bizarre is it that just orb is so ominous looking?
It
Like
is.
it's just a ball, but it's terrifying. Yeah, that's they're pretty crazy. I think I would prefer not to have those on our streets for sure. But
There you go. I'm
and in
glad.
terms of, you know, you mentioned about like, you know, the kind of echoes of the prisoner in
Oh,
these orbs that follow you around threateningly. Um,
yeah.
and we talked, I think it was just last week, we talked about the We Robot event. And I was saying, like, is that a riff on I, Robot, the movie where Will Smith had to kill all those robots? Well, the director of I, Robot has been on Twitter accusing Elon Musk of ripping him off, not just for the name, but for the design of Optimus.
Brilliant.
That's the name of the robot, isn't it? Have I got the right name
Yes,
of the
yes.
robot?
The
Optimus?
Tesla
Yeah.
Optimus robot. Yeah.
So the director is actually saying, "Hang on, that's my robot from my movie I, Robot."
You made a movie, not a robot, Mister. Look, his tweet was
Yeah, but
brilliant. Hey, Elon, tweeted Australian director Alex Proyas. Can I have my designs back, please? No, Elon's creating the future. You just wrote about it. So go on to Elon. I'm becoming a huge fan.
you're becoming a huge fan of Elon Musk.
Elon, listen to me, right? For a lad who comes across as a baddie from a Batman movie, right? In the last 2 weeks, he's done iRobot. He's created, and this particularly won me over, right? A taxi in an Art Deco style. It was beautiful, just beautiful, right? And then he lands a rocket that's 37 stories tall with two little chopsticks. The man's a genius. Love him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I can take. I don't know if I can take away the genius part, but I'm amazed you love him. I definitely agree with the villain from a Batman movie, but yeah, absolutely. Uh, that's
Very good.
probably a good place to end. But and we didn't even get a chance to talk about the goodies that Adobe showed us at Adobe Max that we don't get to play with yet. But they've got some cool stuff coming. But then again, they had some cool stuff in last year's Adobe Max sneak peeks as well that we still don't have. So who knows when we'll get these cool tools?
Oh,
But
they're doing an
they
open
had
AI
this
on it.
thing where in this year's Max they had one where you could do a 2D vector illustration, and then you could hit a button and it would turn it into 3D, and you could rotate it in the same style, the same vector style, and it remains a vector illustration when you're finished doing your AI 3D jiggery pokery. You still have a 3D, or still have a vector illustration at the end of it. Pretty incredible stuff. And what was their
Can I
other
take you
one that
back?
the
Can I take you back, Frank, just to in
yeah.
beautiful artistic style, right? Can I take you back? Because that in particular was the bit that jumped out to me. And I'm going to take you back to, what we started this whole conversation with, which was your concern about, AI generated content. And the line in that article which jumped out to me was um something this is something that would typically require an artist to redraw the image entirely from scratch. And that screams to me AI generated content. And you just, instead of you just put the artist, or instead of me as the developer, you put the artist. That's what AI does. And so think of the poor struggling artists, Frank. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, Adobe's stance is always that, I mean, and this is that thing we talked about the movable ethical lines. Because I mean, right
Mm.
now, Adobe's point is an artist draws it day one. And obviously, yeah, clearly there's a question mark there in terms of, well, will AI just generate it eventually?
Mm.
But right now, the idea is that the human creativity comes first, and then AI helps you to take that creativity and flourish with it and do a million different things with it. Which is a little bit like I was saying at the start, where like, yeah, I use AI for content creation, but I start with my own ideas, I start with my own concepts, or I start with conversations between you and I. I create content. I create content for the YouTube descriptions based on the transcripts of our podcasts, for example. But
Yep.
it's all starting with my original ideas or content. And I hope that Adobe, continues to stay true to that vision of the artist coming first and just giving them tools to really explode their vision.
Brilliant. I just hope the Chinese balls stay away from me. Uh, on that note, Frank, have a great week. And yeah, we'll talk to you all next week.
Chat to you then. Cheers, Justin.
See ya. Bye.